Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome back. Force here, casting a game for you today between WhiteRa and Predy. So Predy versus Duckload Ra, also known as WhiteRa. Looking forward to this matchup. We do have, of course, a TVP here on Shakoris Plateau. We can see here that they are in relatively close positions once those rocks are destroyed, so that's definitely going to come into play at some point later in this game, I would have to imagine. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about this game other than it was a recommended replay from the Gosu replay site, so that is obviously something worth taking a look at. And I did also notice that I didn't see many other casters who had cast this game as well, so I figured, especially considering it's a recommended replay, I should go ahead and get this done for you guys. I will do you the service of that, if nothing else. So WhiteRa coming down with that 9 pylon. Yeah, that's nothing to talk about. So what else is going to be happening? Well, lots of things are in the works right now. I have someone working on a brand new website for me. I also have a new introduction video that's going to be upcoming very soon. I might even have that available tomorrow. The new website's still a few weeks to a month out, but once that is up and ready to go, I'll let you guys know. Definitely some exciting stuff. As far as rest of the day today, going to be coming out with one strategy video. I will try to come out with a third video as well, and then I've got a Diablo 3 video in the works too. So definitely lots of exciting stuff going on. We can see here Predy going to be coming down with that 12 barracks right there, and should be seeing that refinery very, very shortly here as well. So yeah, not a whole lot going on at the beginning of the match. Obviously, don't expect much at all. We are going to see WhiteRa. I think he might be scouting the proper position. It looks like his probe is headed down and to the left as opposed to up and to the right. I would expect him to be crisscrossing up this way by now. So going to be scouting Predy sometime relatively soon. I just called him Predy. Predy, going to be scouting him sometime relatively soon. Not going to be able to probably get down any SCV harassment here because I think he's going to be just about finished. I might be able to get a shot or two off before he finishes that barrack, but no, it looks like that is finished, and it'll be time for him to head back to doing some mining here. We do have the refinery up and saturated. He did get that one shot off, but the first Marine is out, so the time that the probe has remaining inside of this base for scouts is dwindling very, very quickly. We can see again, as soon as that pops out, he's going to want to head out of there, and he is already hightailing it back home. And here we go right now, Predy moving out and going to be scouting his opponent here as well. WhiteRa just getting that Cybernetics core right now, chrono boosting on his probe, so going to be working, focusing a little more on that econ, using up that chrono boost, getting it so tight and so very low. And actually, check that out. Predy not scouting in the proper position, so going to be moving into WhiteRa's base a little bit later. That first Zealot making its way on up, and it's actually probably going to get a shot or two off of that SCV once he does move ahead and get down into the scouting. We are starting off with a reactor here for Predy, so going to be starting out very Marine heavy, and I think he's just going to be fast expanding. Not a whole lot going on right now, so just going to be relying on Marines, bunkers, and there is that expansion being dropped right now. So good play there by Predy. Going to be moving right now into the base. WhiteRa getting one shot. Yeah, not going to get that second shot. Might be able to hit him once before he leaves. We do also, of course, have this Stalker making its way on out, so the SCV going to want to head out of here right away, and that is exactly what he's doing. Second shot, going to be very close. He wants to try to micro and get that SCV if at all possible. Second shot there, and is he going to get a third? No, SCV does just make it out of the way, so great job there by Predy doing the proper micro necessary to make sure he didn't lose that. And here we go, following things up with a factory. We can see that command center about 50% of the way finished right now. SCV Scout's actually going to be moving up here, and I think he's going to just be saving it to scout for a later date. He's going to want to check at some point a few minutes down the road to see if there's an expo coming from WhiteRa. WhiteRa right now moving out with a few of his units. We can see one Stalker at this Zelnaga Tower. Zealot's going to be securing this one right up here, and there's that expansion again and that factory. Second refinery making its way on down as well. Taking a look over here for WhiteRa, we do have a 3 gate, and I think that that's going to be followed up with the expo. I'm going to go ahead and assume that that is the case. Looks like he's moving down to prepare for that expansion right now, and yeah, he will be dropping it. So both players getting early expansion, and we are seeing more and more of this in the metagame nowadays. We're seeing lots of players opening up with something like a 1 Rax expand as Terran and a 3 gate expand as Protoss. It's just been very popular, especially in this matchup PvT. And the more and more people get comfortable with this, actually the better gameplay makes for, I would personally say, because extending things into at least the past the first expo stage of the game lends itself obviously to a more macro focused gameplay, and that's something that I definitely prefer. Trying to move in for that second SCV scout. He did get shot down before actually checking anything. I wonder if he saw that pylon warping. I know he didn't, but just the very fact that WhiteRa had his units positioned up here tells him that there's a good chance that that expo is being dropped, but still, obviously, hasn't completely confirmed that yet. And it looks like we're going to be seeing some Infernal Pre-Igniter Hellion dropping going on. We can see the medevac making its way on out. We do have the first Hellion out, second Hellion on the way, and there is that Infernal Pre-Igniter, so we're probably going to be seeing some blue flame drops going on, and I'm sure WhiteRa is not going to be too thrilled once he figures that one out, because those, of course, can be quite devastating. Deepa going down here at the back door. Obviously want to watch these rocks to see if any push comes through this way. Obviously, like I said at the beginning of the game, once those rocks are down, very short distance between the two bases, and that most likely will come into play if this game extends into the late game. Out front right now, going to be relying, like I said, on just that one bunker for some early game defense. We do have the two Marines trying to push out here, and now they're actually going to be able to take both towers because WhiteRa has retreated with the Stalker and Zealot that he had defending these prior, and pulling out that probe just in time because he knows what's going on. The Stalker is going to make it down, and the Marine's going to want to make sure he gets out of there as well because he will die to that Stalker. So the WhiteRa's expansion is finally up right now, and yeah, still just sticking on those 3 gates. It does have this robo up right here as well, getting that first observer and a Twilight Council going down. But here we go, drop going to be coming down, 2 Hellions. The Infernal Preigniter is done. We do have some tank transition going down over here as well, another factory coming down, so it might be going a little bit mech heavy, but this is going to be a really pivotal moment depending on how much damage he does. Going to be dropping those Hellions right away. Forces pulling back into WhiteRa's base, and there go those Blue Flame Hellions, and just look at how quickly they just absolutely devastate that mineral line. He's going to get another shot off as well. Good split there by WhiteRa, trying to decrease the effectiveness of the damage there that they do, but taking out a lot of probes. Absolutely absurd. Let's take a look at that unit loss tab. 850 resources worth lost for WhiteRa. That's obviously lots and lots of resources that he has taken a hit in. There's that siege mode coming out. We do, of course, have this expansion saturated. No refineries over here quite as of yet. Going to be holding off on those for the time being. I almost expect there to be some more racks coming out, but no, in fact, another factory. So going to be going incredibly mech heavy. Wouldn't be all that surprised, honestly, if we even, yeah, that's just pretty intense stuff. I'm really surprised he's going so mech heavy against TOS. This is becoming a little more prevalent nowadays. We are seeing more mech play against Protoss. Obviously, the thing to keep in mind is that playing with mech makes you very immobile. Now, a way to counteract that is do exactly what Predy is doing by doing things like Blue Flame Hellion drops. Now, obviously, the bulk of your army is still immobile if you're running mainly with siege tanks and even getting Thors as well. But if you can harass the economy at the very least with Blue Flame drops, then it's going to be pretty effective. Taking a look over here inside of WhiteRa's base, we do see that very unfortunate supply block. Nothing you want to have happen in here. We do have that Templar Archives coming out as well, and look at this. WhiteRa going to be returning the favor here to Predy by dropping inside of his base. Here comes that War Prism filled up with 2 Zealots and 2 Stalkers, and he's going to, of course, be able to warp in units inside of his base once he sets that War Prism up. And is he going to be prepared? I'm not sure. He does have a few Marines back here, so going to be just skirting right along the edge, trying to avoid that. Here we go, dropping, going down, wants to take care of those Marines, and is he going to set it up and start warping in? I think he may very well be doing so. Needs to stay away from those Marines, so of course that War Prism very fragile. Over here, SCV Scout making its way on over, actually not warping in units as of yet, just been relying on the drop and gonna pick them up and head on out. Needs to be careful again for those Marines, but does make it out in time, so no problem whatsoever. Awesome drop there, definitely quite effective there for WhiteRa. We do still have the Observer hanging out. Needs to be careful though, because that Raven is just about to pop. Stalker's doing what they can to get some harassment here of this Viking as well, taking a few shots off. The Raven pops, but doesn't go in the direction of the Observer. So for now, WhiteRa's Observer is A-OK. Taking a look inside of WhiteRa's base, we do have a few High Templar out. Also that Storm coming in right now. No upgrades yet for his ground units. We can see all still at the level 1 available for research, so hasn't started those upgrades quite yet. Taking a look over here for Predy, what has he got going on? Well, in terms of unit producing structures, he does have these 3 factories, and again, just going to be sticking with that. It looks like Tank Hellion is what he's going to be going for. It doesn't look like he's planning on any Thors as of yet. He does have that armory up, but Thors really aren't the most effective in this matchup. They obviously can do pretty well, and there's a really popular build nowadays that's basically a Marine Thor all-in that can be incredibly effective against Protoss, but he's way past this point at this moment, so going to be relying just right now on Marines, Hellions, and tanks, and it looks like we are seeing a pretty aggressive push right now. He may actually just be securing this expansion, or he may be pushing out as a distraction. I think he could honestly be pushing out at this point. We'll see what he intends on doing though. Needs to be very careful though, because there are these back destructible rocks. This is actually a relatively dangerous expansion to take for that very reason. Something else to note too is that in general, when players on Shakur's Plateau move to their 3rd, a lot of times because of this vulnerability here, you see a player's 3rd going over here. Look at this, another drop going to be coming over here from WhiteRa. We do have Hellions trying to move in over here as well, so going to be moving at multiple angles. The Hellion did get dropped, but here comes that War Prism drop right now. It's going to be High Templar, big storm going down, taking out a few of those SCVs. That second storm wasn't nearly as devastating, unfortunately, and that was perfectly timed though, because Predy did have most of his forces away from the mineral line there while he was repositioning to defend this expansion. SCVs want to get back to mining right there. We do have this nice pylon over here, so that's pretty cool. WhiteRa dropping a double expand. Very, very intense. Needs to be careful, especially since he knows the medevacs and dropping are on the board. And look at all those blue femme Hellions making their way on out. Look at how terrible they are when it comes to damage versus the Stalker. It takes like a zillion shots to kill a Stalker, even with the blue flame. But look at this. Scouted. Now he knows these expansions are going to be going down, so Predy's going to be able to respond to that at some point in the near future. We did have a big storm down here. Unfortunately, I did miss that, but we did see a storm down there. But you can obviously tell that because there's some roast on the ground, and we do have those High Templars right there. So stopping mining in that position for the time being. Moving around with that SCV Scout at the moment. Not a lot going on besides that right now. Another drop in. Storms going down over here at this expansion. Great job there by WhiteRa. Going to be turning those High Templar into some Archons over there. We're going to be attacking, counterattacking over here with some Hellions. There's a whole lot going on. Getting vision of the high ground, going to start shelling out those siege tank. Hellions doing what they can over here. Unfortunately, no workers for them to actually roast, so not the most effective of things for him to be doing right now. But definitely did a great job over here. WhiteRa stopping mining over here, and then there was some huge storms going down over here as well, and that was very, very effective for WhiteRa. So great job there. Look at all these tanks right now trying to defend this mineral line. No High Templar is going to be able to get anywhere near shelling out over there, although this is still pretty vulnerable. He definitely has the opportunity, just has to be careful for these Marines. Hellions still making their way across. Again, they haven't done a lot of damage because there haven't been a lot of workers. Running into that Mortal is pretty much the last thing they want to do. They will get chopped down very quickly, and now the Immortal pushing away those Hellions. Finally, WhiteRa is going to be transferring workers right on over. So great job there by WhiteRa. Now taking a look at what's going on, we do have the charge upgrade coming, finally getting some of that level upgrades. We're actually working on level 2 right now. WhiteRa is trying to continue to push forward, but again, not going to happen. That siege line, you can see how far that extends right there. The second that High Templar breaks that plane right there, he's going to get blown away. Medevac's giving him vision of the high ground. He could try to go for a feedback, though. I wonder if he'd be within range without getting hit by the tanks. It's definitely worth the shot, I would suppose. Not a lot of drops have been happening since the last big engagement that we saw. Looks like we are going to be seeing some more Hellion harassment moving out, though. And actually, if he moves right here, he could do a lot of damage. We do just have this one cannon, and I think that is exactly where he's going. So Hellion's moving out right now for Predy, and I think he's going to be doing a lot of damage right here. Just need to move into that line and try to get a few shots off. Is he going to be able to do that? Yes, he is. One shot moving down. Going to try to move down, but needs to stay away from that cannon. Another shot going down, taking out a few of those. Moving up here, taking out all the workers up top as well. So great job there by Predy, devastating the economy of this 3rd and 4th base for WhiteRa. Unfortunately, now he's going to be losing these Hellions. Not a whole heck of a lot that he can do about that. The entire force here of WhiteRa pretty much just completely mopping up what he has. Nice little turrets going down here, pushing back, and I think they may have actually killed that High Templar. Do we have any kill counts? I guess we don't on these things. But yeah, I think that High Templar did drop to those while WhiteRa wasn't paying attention. So a great job there by Predy. And over here, again, for WhiteRa, we have that Blink research making its way on out. Level 2 upgrades. Now taking a look inside of Predy's base, just continuing up that Hellion tank build. And let's take a look at that unit tab right there. 12 tanks, 24 Marines. We have 9 Hellions as well, and then 55 SCVs to the 70 probes. So definitely at this point, WhiteRa has had a huge advantage right now. Big storms going down. Oh man, pushing back all the mining right there. Taking advantage of the fact that those tanks left, he dropped with that War Prism, put down a Zealot and a couple High Templar, and dropped some huge storms. Excellent work there, cutting back on those numbers again and severely damaging. Another drop's going to do a lot, but here we go, some more Hellions moving forward right now for Predy, and a couple of shots are going to just roast the worker count here of WhiteRa. Unbelievable amounts of damage, even with that cannon there and this bulk of the forces. He did manage to take out a lot of those, so great job there by Predy. We've just seen so much harassment in this game. Absolutely phenomenal, I'd have to say. Level 2 vehicle upgrades coming out right now for Predy, as well as some more tanks and Hellions. Very comfortable with that tank Hellion build, and we're going to be seeing some more harassment. The Blink resource just about finished. Going to be blinking down onto those tanks, taking them out, and then working on the resource line. And here we go. Here's that blink. No, it's not. Never mind. At the very least, he has stopped mining. Going to be blinking down, taking out that Viking. Great job over there. Another drop going down for Predy, though. He's responding with some harassment himself. He is fed up with all of this garbage from WhiteRa. Scanning down to see that there are no workers, setting up the tanks right now. All the workers leaving. Scan down to see there was no forces, rather, is what I meant to say. And he has completely stopped mining right now. WhiteRa is going to be forced to pull all of his units back here. Predy's going to want to get up those tanks and head out of there. I don't think he has enough to deal with this right now. Guardian Shield going down, doing what he can, though. Predy's going to try to stay in the game and try to do what he can for harassment. Stalker's blinking down just out of the range of that planetary fortress. Going to be, again, continuing up their harassment here. And the biggest part of this is that he stopped mining completely. And the great blink over there taking out those escaping medevacs. So awesome game so far. Lots of harassment between both players. Predy moving down his forces. He really wants to try to secure this expansion. He is almost mined out of his natural, almost completely mined out of his main as well. Making that transfer over to this expansion. Just so much drop harassment. Trying to keep on top of this is pretty nuts, guys, but I am doing what I can. Just like I was actually playing the game, I am keeping a close, tight eye on the mini-map, and yeah, that's something you should try to do if you play games. If you play StarCraft, make sure you keep an eye on the mini-map. Going to be moving across. This Raven, though, getting spotted. The Marine says, screw it, I don't feel like attacking. He's actually out of range right now, and I don't think at this point Predy sees. I'm surprised WhiteRa is actually keeping this here. And here we go, big push coming down from WhiteRa right now, moving down with the Blink Stalkers, Immortals as well. Blinking, unfortunately, into some tank fire. Going to want to pull back at this point. WhiteRa feeling pretty bold, going to be starting to push out with his expansions. Right here would be very, very dangerous as well. Really surprised neither player has made a push for this expansion. Just happy with taking their half of the map. WhiteRa is going to be trying to move down, though. Needs to avoid that tank line. What is he doing? Taking heavy losses. This is not good for WhiteRa. There we go. Finally pulling back his forces. Huge storms going down on the Marines, and Hellions doing devastating amounts of damage. Unfortunately, at the same time, those High Templar did get sniped, though. So obviously not the best of situations there for WhiteRa. Expansion just about up. Continuing up these upgrades. We actually have a big switch coming right now. We're going to be switching into Colossus. Actually, really great move there by WhiteRa, because that is going to be quite effective. Excuse me, we don't see a lot of Vikings on the board. We do have those tanks, of course, but with the upgraded range, you can actually deal with that quite easily. And here we go, moving up to the tanks while they are in siege, but the DPS of those tanks out on siege is actually quite devastating. Needs to be really careful. Hellion's going to be target firing down that Immortal. Moving forward with a lot of High Templar. Going to be seeing some big storms very soon, I would imagine. No, just out of the range right there. And now that those tanks are sieged up, going to want to pull back. And so Predy pushing forward to try to secure this expansion. I'm sorry, try to secure the middle and take out this expansion over here for WhiteRa. I think WhiteRa is just going to try to circumvent right now. You can see him moving down here with his forces. Lots of High Templar, as well as this Colossus. Going to be taking out these rocks, taking out those rocks, and pushing into this expansion. He obviously doesn't want to walk into the siege line. That's pretty much the worst thing in the world that you could do. So rocks are dropped. Colossus going to be getting some free shots right here, I'd have to imagine. Do we have that thermal lance out right now? I'm not sure. I'll check that in a moment, though. And huge storm going down. Obviously not the most effective on tanks, but doing what he can. Taking out the siege line one step at a time. Immortal going to be wreaking havoc right now on these tanks. There are just far too many tanks right now for him to push into, though. And unfortunately, WhiteRa did lose most of his forces. But WhiteRa is resilient. He's not going to give up, even though he's very low right now. Take a look at that big difference right now. WhiteRa very, very low. He's going to try to warp into... Well, look at that. Unbelievable. Okay, never mind. He had the sensor tower. I was like, that was a retardedly spot-on scan there, but he had the sensor tower, so he knew where they were. Was just scanning to check exactly what it was. And Predy going to be pushing out right now, and he's going to, of course, be trying to target these expansions. What he wants to hurt is the income of WhiteRa. He doesn't really care so much about pushing on the main. If he can hurt the income, then he's going to be at a big advantage. More Blink Stalkers moving down, working on these back rocks, and actually WhiteRa is going to be starting to work at these production facilities here for Predy. As soon as he gets those rocks down, going to be pushing right on in. Predy still right on in the middle. WhiteRa, of course, hasn't been able to do any mining at this base, and he will, in fact, lose the base. Just dropping right now to that siege fire. But here we go. WhiteRa moving into the main right now. Going to start trying to do some work here. Needs to be careful. He wants to blink up on those tanks. In fact, rather just blinking away, going to let them unsiege and then move forward, doing what he can to hit some damage, do some lots of damage, rather. Blink Stalkers continuing to stream in forward over here. Blinking forward, trying to take out that tank. Going to be trying to get this one as well. Hellion's not so much of a concern for him at the moment, and great job so far. Those Hellions, look how little damage they do to those Blink Stalkers, and this has forced Predy to basically retreat from the middle and bring all of his forces back to his main. This was a great response here by WhiteRa. This is pretty much precisely what he needed to do. Pull Predy away from the middle. And yeah, there we go. Again, you can see pulling all of his forces away from the middle. Just deal with this harassment. And does drop the armory while it's still researching, blinking around, taking advantage of the mobility. Wants to take a look at what's going down over here. And obviously he knows at this point in the game, incredibly factory heavy. And here we go. A huge ball of Colossus moving forward. Going to be stopping the mining over here right now. All Predy really has for a full mining base is right up here. Those Colossus just absolutely devastating. They're going to be able to take out this planetary fortress. SCVs are going to try to repair. Colossus need to try to stay out of the range, and they can, of course, do so. And there we go. The expansion does drop. Very unfortunate, but Predy making a big push right now, sieging up those tanks, and then going to be continuing to push forward. Colossus need to be careful not to be too close. One Colossus getting dropped there very quickly by all of those sieged up tanks, and WhiteRa going to be abusing the mobility here of these Colossus and just continuing to push forward, continuing to move. Some more Blink Stalkers over there. We do have a few turrets set up here, as well as this Raven. Hopefully Predy grabs that and brings that back home, because the Raven Ravens not helping him a whole heck of a lot over here. Those Colossus catching tanks out of siege, and that is very terrible for those tanks. They're going to take absolutely tremendous amounts of damage, though. Again, you can see the DPS pretty ridiculous, though. Trying to target fire down those Vikings. He doesn't want those Vikings to shoot out the Colossus. Big counterattack looks like is coming from Predy. Going to be pushing in the main. Needs to be careful, though. Colossus at his front gate. Blink Stalkers moving forward. This is not a planetary fortress, and that is not a good idea. Blink Stalkers having no trouble doing lots of damage over here, forcing the stopping of mining over here. Unsieged tanks trying to move forward against these Colossus. There are just too many of them. There are too many Colossus for them to deal with, however. Absolutely completely roasting those, and I think this may have been a huge, gigantic, ginormous mistake from Predy. Not having a planetary fortress over here has forced him to stop mining and work on repairs, and that's a big problem. Of course, Colossus continuing to push forward, but getting crushed by those sieged up and unsieged tanks as well as those Vikings. WhiteRa trying to continue to expand here, working to try to get expansions at either end over here. As far as production, not a lot going on. Going to be warping in a few more Blink Stalkers. It looks like at this point, WhiteRa is pretty much going to be working with Colossus and Blink Stalkers. We can see some Immortals coming out as well, though, so I guess I may be ill-informed. We do have 3 Immortals making their way on out, knowing at this point that Predy is so tank-heavy. Those Immortals, of course, are going to be very effective. Blink Stalkers moving on down right now. We are seeing a little bit of a push come down from Predy, and now Predy's been on his back foot for quite some time. If he can push out and do some damage, then he may actually be able to recover. And look at that, this tank positioning is absolutely absurd, stopping any sort of expansions from going down over here, and going to be hitting this one as well. Very, very frustrating. I'm sure WhiteRa is not too thrilled right now. We do have some more Hellions and tanks coming out as well. Those Immortals working their way on out. What else do we have for forces right now? We do have some Blink Stalkers over here for WhiteRa. Anything going on over here? Lots of Zealots going on this rocks. Now WhiteRa is going to be trying to hit the main over here and this expansion at the same time. And again, this is an orbital command and not a planetary fortress, and as such, much more vulnerable, and that's a little bit of a cause for concern. Big scan going down from Predy. He did, of course, want to check to see if WhiteRa had expanded up there. But here we go. Probably going to be seeing a 2-pronged attack. Look at that. Zealots moving this way. Blink Stalkers and a few Zealots moving over here. And this is going to be a big problem. It's going to be very difficult. Predy needs to respond properly by bringing a little bit of forces up here, and then a bulk of his force down here to deal with this. But WhiteRa going to be moving into the main. And no, he says, screw it. I am counterattacking. I do not care that there are units in my base. A big, big counterattack coming down right now from Predy. Lots of tanks in there. A few Hellions, some Vikings there as well. Great unit composition. We do have a Dark Shrine making its way on out. Now, that would be very effective if there weren't Ravens on the board, but look at this. WhiteRa absolutely devastating the base over here, stopping all mining over here as well. Those charge lots obviously quite threatening, and the big, big push coming down from Predy. He does not care. He is just going to stop all mining for WhiteRa. He's going to move into all these bases, and I think he's quite content with the base trade at this point. Obviously not bringing any forces back to defend. He does not even care. He's got nothing in production right now. He is just going straight up for a base trade. He seems to have quite a formidable force, though, so this could actually work out in his favor. WhiteRa going to be going straight for the economy, taking out all those SCVs as much as possible. Dark Shrine has just finished, so WhiteRa is going to be able to get some DT in very shortly. Again, needs to be wary of that Raven, though. We did have some Storms going down over there, doing what they can for damage. Actually did quite a bit to those Hellions as well as those air units over there, continuing up this harassment. We do have some more High Templar as well as Colossus making their way on in, and this base trade is not looking good right now for Predy. Now, he's obviously stopped all of the mining from WhiteRa. WhiteRa is not mining at all except from this base, but that's not going to be lasting very long. But of course, the same thing has happened over here. The big advantage right now, though, that WhiteRa does have is he still has all of his production buildings up for the most part, and Predy is not producing anything. We do have those 3 Colossus making their way on out. Zealot's going to be taking out this base over here. The base for WhiteRa has dropped over here from this push from Predy. WhiteRa trying to come up with this expansion as well. Wants to get up that slight advantage with that extra mining base. That's obviously more than a slight advantage. Now, taking a look at that unit tab, 21 workers to 1 SCV, so that not a lot of workers left for Predy at all. Predy is pretty much out of the game. He just needs to kill everything WhiteRa has. If he can do that, then he still has a chance at winning this game. WhiteRa has definitely had a significant advantage right now, but lifting off the expansion and flying it over, and this actually, this would be, I mean, he could, literally, Predy could just lift this off and fly it into the corner, and there's nothing WhiteRa could do. WhiteRa does not have any air units right now. He doesn't even have a Stargate, and this is actually very dangerous. Big push coming down from Predy. Scan going down, taking out the 1 DT that would have absolutely devastated his units, and actually WhiteRa is looking to be in a little bit of trouble. Literally, if Predy lifts this off and flies it away, WhiteRa could lose this game. This push is huge. WhiteRa does not have a lot to deal with it right now, and my gosh, this is pretty unbelievable. Predy could very well win this game. He is in an excellent position right now. WhiteRa doing what he can to frantically take out all of the buildings of Predy. He still does not know about this expansion, or he just hasn't tried to take it out. Yeah, he doesn't know where it is right now, so huge problem right now. Predy is going to be looking to win this game. This is unbelievable. Again, I've not seen this, but I think he's going to win this game. I don't know what WhiteRa can do right now against all of these tanks. Just absolutely devastating the main base. WhiteRa, only with a few things remaining. He does have this one mining base over here, but even with the units that he has, taking a look at the army tab, he does not have enough, really, it seems, to deal with all these tanks. Technically, he is ahead, but it doesn't really matter. Looking at the size of his force and the actual units that he does have, it doesn't look like he has enough at this moment to deal with this. He does have the 6 High Templars, so if he gets some great storms down, and with those 2 Immortals and that 1 DT, yeah, this is very close. I do not know what to call right now, so I'm going to stop guessing. Taking out these buildings, WhiteRa hopefully is going to try to cancel this before it does drop. Obviously not working, unfortunately not paying enough attention. Obviously this is quite a frantic game, so WhiteRa going to be rallying all of his forces to the middle right now. He does still have the 1 mining base, and look at it. I knew this was going to happen. I would almost call this BM, but you know what? Your buildings can lift off for a reason. So here we go. WhiteRa realizing that is lifted off. He knows at this point he just has to kill these forces. No, there are no scans. There are no scans available right now for Predy. He cannot see this DT. This DT is going to go to town on these guys. He cannot scan because this is lifted up. He needs to land this and drop a scan, but he's not going to be able to because of the Stalker. This is probably the funniest thing I have ever seen. This DT could win the game for WhiteRa right now. WhiteRa pushing forward, getting big storms down, and that is it. Predy's losing pretty much everything right now. The DT, absolutely unbelievable hero right here, and there is the double GG from Predy. Absolutely unreal game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this game. That was pretty nuts. I have to tell you, there's just way too much to even talk about. All I have to say is that was an epic game. So yeah, I'm gonna come out with a strategy video later today too. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, as always, guys, keep watching and keep owning. We can see right now coming out with that 5th base over here. Now we do have Beastie Cutie moving across the middle, feeling pretty confident with that Marine tank medevac. Here we go, trying to move down, catch those tanks out of siege again, and they're definitely going to do a lot of damage. Zergling's moving forward, Baneley's coming at the back, a few getting trapped down there, Infested Terrans, big Fungal Growth going down, and Damaga completely mopping up the forces here of Beastie Cutie. That is a big problem. All Beastie Cutie is left with right now are these medevacs. He lost everything else, and these Infestors definitely played a big role in that. The Fungal Growths keeping things in place, allowing for those Banelings to roll